Story 1. We spent 2.5 hours on a busy corner with dozens of other people. Some wore dinosaur suits. Others held signs. An elderly veteran held a large American flag. Approximately 30% of passing motorists honked and waved. About 20% flipped us the bird, gave thumbs down, or shouted. A few trucks rolled coal into the crowd. The other 50% stared straight ahead or at their phones. They would not make eye contact. One man yelled, "Trump 2028" at the elderly veteran. He responded, "We're here for you, stupid." Story 2. I went and I'm glad I did. I'm seeing a lot of people saying they don't believe the protest methods are effective, but I think people are misunderstanding their goal. You can't create organized, targeted mass civil disobedience out of a vacuum. To be honest, Americans are largely politically apathetic. People don't even know where to start. The No Kings protests are a very good start to mobilize and engage people across the country, giving them a safe place to begin political activity at scale. Estimates for today are 7 million people, at least that's what I've seen reported. That is 2% of the total population of the United States. That's a lot of fucking people. It is about 10% of the number of people who voted for Harris last year. It is nearly 3 times the margin by which she lost. It is slightly more than the difference between Biden in 2020 and Harris in 2024. He received about 6 million more votes than she did. If it continues to grow and keeps people engaged, it could lead to significant electoral change. And who knows, if they get 10, 20, or 30 million people involved by next year and then call for a general strike, we might see something dramatic. In short, these protests are not about civil disobedience. They are about getting people politically active because Americans are largely politically inactive. Stop fucking moaning and start building community. Story 3. I went to our rural Ohio County gathering. We had nearly 1,000 people there. I am 56 and had never been to a protest before. I just could not sit it out. Story 4. I've always followed politics closely. I've been progressive, donated to candidates, and voted, but I had never been to a protest until today. I am 42. I never thought protests accomplished much, and I am very introverted and dislike crowds. I went to my local No Kings protest and made a sign to carry. Things are so bad right now that I felt I would regret not going. I live in a town of about 80,000. The atmosphere was electric, uplifting, and inspiring. There were about 4,000 people. The event was well organized, peaceful, and calm. I am looking forward to attending more. Story 5. I wanted to go, but I could not find anyone to accompany me. I did not have the courage to go alone. It is a silly reason, but true. Story 6. I did not. My wife did. It is firm household policy that we do not both attend the same protest, so she goes and I am her backup if there is a problem. Story 7. I didn't because I was holding down the house so my wife could be the organizer for our local town. She ended up drawing more than 300 people, which is huge for our area. Fuck Trump. Story 8. So Trump posted his response to the rallies. An artificial intelligence video of him wearing a crown and in a fighter jet dumping human feces onto the faces and into the mouths of everyone protesting him. Keep in mind, polls show most Americans support the protests. Since that is the kind of person he is, that is why I had to go, among many other reasons. I proudly brought my children. Hundreds of people and many more supporters and vehicles were in Newport Beach, California, the place Trump goes when he wants to raise money. We are the majority and we will win. Remember not to support half-hearted reforms once we do. Story 9. We went to Corpus Christi, Texas. There was a huge showing for our area. It was an easy decision to go. We live in a red state that needs a lot more blue. Ted Cruz, Greg Abbott, Ken Paxton, and others are contributing to the death of democracy. It's our responsibility to get out and let them know they are on the wrong track. As for Donald Trump, he needs to know that we are here, ready to take him on in any way we can. We also wanted to encourage our neighbors. Seeing like-minded people in person helps keep our spirits up. Story 10. Yes, I wanted to show support and hang out with like-minded neighbors, and a huge number of them showed up. I estimate tens of thousands attended my local event. It was a great atmosphere and super fun. There were many signs and lots of costumes. It was kind of like an inspiring street party. Story 11. Trump posted a video created with artificial intelligence in which he flies a fighter jet while wearing a crown and then carpet bombs protesters with excrement. Story 12. I grew up wondering about the ordinary people I read about in history books who stood by and did nothing or just gawked. I have a child, and I understand being afraid to put him in a position to lose me or to lose standing in the community if people I know saw me. I realized that what holds people back are fear, helplessness, and apathy. I had mostly done nothing but leave internet comments and call representatives, and I did not want to stay home on what could be the most historically significant protest in my lifetime and, if I am lucky, in my son's lifetime. So I bought posters and made a couple. I cannot hand this kind of life over to my son, so I brought him along. I wanted him to see for himself that the people who are part of the anti-fascist movement are there because we love each other and we want life to feel safe. I wanted him to know for sure that give me liberty or give me death is part of our call to action. And if we are not even protecting our own safety and liberty, we are failing to protect those the current administration is literally putting into chains. Why should we stand idle? Story 13. I have never been to a protest before. Over the years, I have accepted that sometimes you win and sometimes you lose, and that is okay. This time is different. The policies that Donald Trump and his administration are carrying out are wrong and will not take us to a good place. I went to the local hardware store, bought a flag, and attended the protest for about 90 minutes. It was good to meet and talk with so many like-minded people in person rather than online. I am looking forward to going again because this is a time when all decent people need to rise up and declare that this is not okay. Story 14. As a brown immigrant with children, I drove around and appreciated the Caucasian representation I saw. Thank you all, especially the single man wearing a bright green shirt at that stop sign. You are a brave hero. Story 15. I was in a crowd of about 8,000. There were many signs, inflatable costumes, and music. Trump supporters cruised by with their flags. Some trucks emitted black smoke but were reported to the police. It was great to stand with like-minded people. We received many honks and thumbs-up gestures. Story 16.1. I am concerned President Trump and his allies are turning the United States into a dictatorship. President Trump expressed a desire to be like Kim Jong-un of North Korea. A week ago, Stephen Miller claimed that President Trump has plenary authority. A video explains what plenary authority is and why President Trump does not have it. Point 2. I live in a red state where most people I know support President Trump. Attending No Kings is one way I express my disapproval of the president's attempts to rule the country. When I attend these protests, I see I am not the only person who opposes those efforts. That gives me hope. Story 17. I am 38. I know that I am one small blue dot in a sea of red. When the regime began calling it a Hate America rally, I could not sit at home. I have back problems and slept for hours after coming home. It was great to see many like-minded people who care about what is going on. There were many older people, which I found surprising, and everyone was kind. I also wore a unicorn onesie and received many compliments. Story 18. I attended the last one earlier this year. I intended to be at this one too, but in the end all we could do was drive past it, honking in support while I waved my previous No Kings sign out the passenger window. Story 19. My wife and I went. We had never been to a protest before. We brought 6 cases of water, a total of 144 bottles, and gave them all away to thirsty protesters. We just wanted a chance to express our First Amendment rights and to say we oppose dictators and kings. Story 20. When I saw Mike Johnson's comments about it, I got really excited to do anything that pisses him off. Story 21. I did not make it due to family obligations. I attended a previous demonstration and will attend the next one. Story 22. I went because recently I was stuck at a roadside diner in Missouri while phone news was on. I listened as the newscaster described protesters outside the Broadview Immigration and Customs Enforcement Facility as criminals and people who wanted to start trouble for their 15 minutes of fame. But if 7 million of us show up, it is harder to dismiss us as criminals and attention seekers. becoming criminal number 7,000,001 is another person marching to disprove a false narrative. Story 23. Went to Minneapolis, Minnesota. I am sick of the shit my federal government is up to. Story 24. I did go but was only there a couple of hours. I went because I am opposed to the fascist dictatorship that Trump is transitioning us toward. I have no expectation that it can be stopped in my lifetime, but I wanted to increase the number of protesters for future historians. I do not believe the victors write history anymore. In the short term, yes, but reality exists and the world can see it. Events are recorded and facts can be corroborated. If we survive as a species long enough, the history of the United States will be known. Much of it was dark and shameful, and much of it was great. Like most things, it was complicated. But it has been over since Trump somehow got everybody to forget that he was a universal punchline in early 2015 and had been for decades. Story 25. I went. When they called it an anti-American rally and basically labeled anyone who disagreed with them a terrorist, I could not keep away. Story 26. 11 grandchildren, 2 great-grandchildren, their parents, 3 adult children, my mother, and other loved ones. I am resisting and fighting for all of them and for us as a collective. Story 27. I wanted to go both times, but medically I am fragile and on dialysis, and Texas weather can be brutal even in mild temperatures for me. It would be very bad if something were to happen and I could not go home that same day. Someday I hope someone reads this and fights for my rights. My name is Kay. On behalf of young disabled citizens of this great country, Godspeed. God bless everyone who made it to these peaceful protests. Story 28. I am an American, and I will be damned if anyone is going to call me a terrorist, simply because I support democracy. If a government ever tries to tell you, be quiet, we're doing this for your own good. For example, blowing boats out of the water and arguing only trust us, they were criminals without providing a single shred of evidence. Then something is deeply wrong. If the evidence were so concrete and unquestionable, they would have no problem releasing it. Yet they do not. As a reminder, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement makes about 300 mistakes a year. Since 2002, data from the Transactional Records Access Clearinghouse and other sources suggest that U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement has mistakenly identified at least 2,840 United States citizens for deportation, with at least 214 being held in custody. Some estimates, particularly between 2003 and 2010, suggest over 20,000 United States citizens were mistakenly detained or deported. A 2021 Government Accountability Office report indicated that 70 potential United States citizens were deported between 2015 and 2020. That is roughly 300 mistakes per year. This year alone, there have been numerous examples of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement mistakenly arresting, detaining, or attempting to deport United States citizens. April 2025. A United States-born man charged with being an unauthorized alien in Florida was released after spending the night in jail on a 48-hour hold requested by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement amid the Trump administration's deportation actions. Juan Carlos Lopez Gomez, 20, was arrested by the Florida Highway Patrol when the car he was riding in was pulled over for speeding, according to an arrest affidavit and his attorney, Mutaki Akbar. The American citizen, born in Grady County, Georgia, where he lives in the city of Cairo, was crossing into Florida for his work in construction in Tallahassee, about 45 minutes from home. April 7, 2025. Ramiro Martinez, a United States citizen and immigrant rights advocate, was mistakenly detained by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement at the 35th District Court near Plymouth while supporting an undocumented immigrant. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement acknowledged the incident in which Martinez was mistakenly targeted during an enforcement operation. In another case, a United States citizen in Arizona was detained by immigration officials for 10 days. In the case of Mayor Will Gutierrez, officers grabbed him and 2 other boys at the entrance to a building. One officer said, "No, he's not the one," suggesting they were looking for someone else. Another officer said, "Take him anyway." They appear to have been detaining people without properly verifying identities. Story 29. Rural Northwest Tennessee. My mother, aged 88, wanted to go, so I took her. According to the local news, hundreds of people showed up. We were only there for the first hour, and people were still coming in. They could have reached 200. This is a very red area of the state. The comments on the news article were interesting, ranging from questions about what they expected to accomplish to assertions that there has never been a king. I pointed out the revolution, and one commenter replied that the King of England invaded the United States and tried to take us over. Everything bad they say about the education system here is correct. Story 30. I did not go, but my parents did. They are both horrified that Donald Trump was re-elected. I would say my mother, in particular, has become more politically active since the election. Story 31. Yes, I felt absolutely awful, fatigued but not contagious, yet I did it because I am exercising my right to free speech while I still have it. Story 32. My wife and I wanted to go, but our dog is very old and has severe separation anxiety. He probably has only a couple of months left. I usually leave my apartment about once a week because I work from home. My wife stopped by briefly to pick up groceries, and she pointed and laughed at someone with a Trump bumper sticker. Story 33. I live in Chicago and wish I had gone. I have been very sick for days, so I did not. I would have had to work today if I had not been sick, so it would not have worked out. These were historic demonstrations that any patriotic American should be proud to participate in. I had to pick up my phone and saw quite a few people on Chicago Transit Authority trains coming back from it, looking energized and hopeful. That was cool, I guess. Story 34. Protests are important for many reasons. Mobilizing people increases voter turnout. Galvanizing the base makes opponents nervous, and it should. Ignore Reddit bots that say protests do not matter. That is false. If protests did not matter, Taco Titties would not be making artificial intelligence videos of Trump dumping excrement on protesters. Story 35. My grandfather fought the Nazis. My mother protested Marcos's martial law. I had to do my part to fight tyranny. Story 36. I went for a little while. My neighbor asked if I wanted to go, and I had nothing else going on. I believe in the cause. I just think these scheduled events are too nice. There was a good turnout, but it was more of a rally than a protest. Story 37. Yes, because I felt that if I let those in power keep me from using my voice, I would be well on my way to not having a voice. Story 38. I was disappointed that I couldn't attend the San Diego protest because I had a cruise scheduled months earlier, but I realized yesterday that the cruise ship dock is at the exact same address. My wife and I spent an hour with the protesters before the cruise. I had never seen so many people downtown. It was a huge crowd and everyone seemed happy and upbeat. The lead marchers were Native Americans in traditional dress, carrying drums. It was inspiring and gave me hope. Story 39. I would have loved to, but I am currently at home with coronavirus disease 2019. 10 out of 10. I do not recommend it. Story 40. This is a bot account, you all. The title even reads like a survey. This is turning into fucking Facebook. Story 41. I did not. My protest was in the ballot box. I have friends who went. They like large crowds. There seemed to be a lot happening. I hope they sent their message. Story 42. I am in Tulsa, surrounded by Trump supporters. It feels great to be out there with intelligent people who care about integrity and safeguarding our democracy. Story 43. It is crazy to think how many people believe Donald Trump would make a good president. About 1 in 4 people around me voted for him. On Saturday, I was surrounded by thousands of people who, like me, disagreed with his policies and wanted him out of office. Story 44. I went. I am a big fan of the Bill of Rights and human rights. That is why. Story 45. I live in a small town in Arkansas. We had so many this time. If you want to see it, I posted a video on my profile on the Arkansas subreddit. Story 46. I did not go because I work in public transit. I figured I would be more helpful by showing up for work and transporting people to and from the protest rather than being just one person in the crowd. Instead, I helped many people get to where they wanted to protest and return home. If I had been in almost any other industry, I would have gone. but I was in a position to help others with the protest today, so I did. Story 47. My family went to one of the smaller protests in our state. There were still about 1,000 people there. I would say about 50% of passing cars honked in support. Only a few people made rude gestures. One blasted a song about Trump 2020. One tried and failed to roll coal in his small pickup truck. My favorite was an older gentleman who yelled out the window that we needed to get a life. I am 44 years old, registered as an independent, and this was my first street protest. I had visited my representative's office several times with a large group to demand to be heard during Trump's first term, and that was effective. We went as a family and did not go far into the crowd in case things got rowdy. I stayed at the edge so I could get my children to the car quickly. My sign said, "I am not usually a sign guy, but what the fuck? Things are so bad, even we introverts are protesting." I felt I needed to be there to express that I am not okay with the Trump administration abusing its power and trampling on the Constitution. We cannot just sit at home and scroll past all this terrible, god-awful news. My children made their own signs. My daughter was proud of her No Kings, More Unicorn sign, which inspired my son's No Kings, More Bluey sign. My wife chose No Faux King Way. Story 48. I could not because I was working, but there was a protest at the intersection closest to my workplace. One of my younger coworkers, who was 20, commented on how loud and annoying all the cheering and honking was. I told him that was the point, to come together and say as a group that we are all here, this is not okay for our country and everyone needs to know. The best I could do was drive through on my lunch break and honk my horn in support. Story 49. I did not go because I had to work and could not get the time off, but my job was right next to where the protest took place, so I still heard all the cheering and honking. I feel very proud of my city and was nearly in tears yesterday. Story 50. I attended the Dallas event. I want my son, when this is discussed or taught, to know that although I cannot make a financial impact, I will make my voice heard through voting and by participating in effective campaigns against people, organizations, and practices I do not support. Story 51. Not this one. I'm deathly ill, running a 102-degree fever all weekend. Even if I could have made it, I did not want to get anyone else sick. My family went without me. My aunt is particularly fond of the Antifa sign. Story 52. I went to our local protest in Northeast Tennessee. I had not been to a protest before, but I decided that if I am going to complain about Trump online, the least I can do is stand on the side of the road for a couple of hours and put my money where my mouth is. I do not think there is any turning this ship without major historic events, but if I do not at least stand up when given the chance, then I am part of the silence. Story 53. I was working today and couldn't make it. I support the cause, though. Story 54. I went. I think it is meaningful to stand up for what you believe is right. I met some great people and saw clever signs. I wish there had been more organized protest than just a rally, but it felt good to be among people who share my concerns and fears and still have faith in our democracy. Story 55. Yes. I don't want to look back and feel like I didn't do enough. It's also great exercise for my depression. Story 56. I went, but it was less about making my voice heard and more about supporting the protesters. I brought a truck full of water bottles to distribute. When I was younger, I used to make hundreds of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and give them out. I couldn't do that this time, but I enjoy providing tangible logistical support. Story 57. I had to get a magnetic resonance imaging scan today, but I salute those who did go. I understand there were plenty of older people like me, so blaming boomers for the rise of Trump is a bit insulting. He will be just a bad memory in a few years. Story 58. I did not go. I love all of you who did. We cannot afford a professional caregiver for my mom, and I have to do gig work when she is sleeping or having a good day so we can keep a roof over our heads and food on the table. She is on Medicare and I am on Medicaid. I have no idea how we would survive without them, and the Trump administration wants to take them away from both of us. I think of you decent people as my fellow Americans, and I hope we can survive this administration. Story 59. I missed the first one because of prior plans, but considering how things have gotten exponentially worse since then, it felt like a civic duty to show up. Story 60. I stayed home and have been documenting the events. Does anyone have significant reports of bad actors at the protests? It appears to have gone off flawlessly, or at least any bad actors were quickly dealt with and were not an issue. Story 61. I was so proud of my son for joining me in standing up for democracy today. There were many families enjoying the day. The best part was the enthusiasm. Story 62. My wife and in-laws are afraid to leave the house because of immigration and customs enforcement. Despite living here the majority of their lives and almost going bankrupt trying to obtain their citizenship the right way. So I went for them. Fuck immigration and customs enforcement. Story 63. I hope you show your disapproval at the ballot box. Story 64. I went. I was concerned about it for days before the event because I thought there would be mass arrests, but I put my fear aside. I went to Michael's to buy poster board and to Lowe's to buy a stick to use as a handle. My local protest had far more people than I expected. Everyone was friendly. I did not see any police, much to my surprise. Story 65. I visited my brother for family weekend. There was a No Kings protest on campus, and we all went because we felt it was important. Story 66. I was at the Green Valley March. I felt it was my civic duty. Story 67. I am a New Yorker in Chicago for the weekend, and my girlfriend and I went to the march. About 30 minutes in, I decided to start leading a chant, and after a few minutes an organizer handed me a megaphone. It was nice to feel a sense of unity and to know we could do something, anything, to show we stand against everything this grifting, spiteful administration is doing. Story 68. It was all over the news. My friends and family were talking about it, and my social media feeds were full of it. This is a major part of American history, and it is important for people to be involved. I did not go because I am in a different country, and it is getting annoying how often Canadians are dragged into this orange, fiery crusade. Story 69. How could I stay home? I care deeply about America and hate what this administration is doing. From healthcare and immigration and customs enforcement to a compromised Department of Justice and the logging of public lands, we must act. We need to protect land adjacent to national parks, not sell it to. Provide tax cuts for billionaires. We must preserve public lands for wildlife instead of allowing drilling and logging. Forests help clean the air. That is backed by science. We must rein in billionaire greed. This country belongs to all Americans, not just the ultra-rich who would pillage land for private profit. Story 70. The ultimate end of executive overreach is someone telling me what to think or do. Trump is overreaching, and the self-described watchdogs are cheering. That reveals their desire for a king or lord. I strongly disagree. I am aware of the worst-case scenario. Story 71. My back was killing me, but we spent 1.5 hours giving thumbs up, with flags flying and posters held high. I was happy to be part of a movement to keep our nation free. If it helped in any way, I am glad. Story 72. For a while, I wasn't proud to be an American when Trump was re-elected. It took me a while to realize why I was so angry whenever I heard the news and listened to what he said. It's because I am proud to be an American that I hate him so much. This is not the country I grew up in, and there's so much I can't do to fight him except get out of bed on Saturday morning and join many other proud Americans who want to stop the hate, stop the lies, and stop pretending this is okay. If our senators won't fight for us, we'll show them exactly why they need to fight for us. Story 73. I'm glad I went. I'm even more glad to hear there were no violent incidents other than a few supporters of the Make America Great Again movement. One was arrested for brandishing a gun. I'll be honest, I was surprised it was so peaceful across the country and around the world. Story 74. My sister and I went. We took our veteran father's American flag. We were not in a major city, but the number of people who showed up was surprisingly large. There must have been a few thousand people. I was proud to be there. Story 75. While traveling, we found a protest in Berryville, Virginia. For a town that small, so many people showed up. It was nice not to feel alone. Story 76. Joined 200,000 people in Washington, District of Columbia with the local Defend Democracy Indivisible group. Story 77. I wanted to go, but I was working. I loved seeing all the protesters on bikes heading there, though. Story 78. I participated in one of the many events held in Volusia and Flagler counties in Deep Red, Florida. I was encouraged by the many friendly honks and positive vibes from everyone in attendance. The crowds were larger than expected, even during the pro-Trump Biketoberfest. Most of the people who were flipping us off and shouting Trump is king were laughed at. Story 79. I have a nice American flag zip-tied to a 15-foot tree saw pole. I like how fellow protesters look at the pole, then look way up and approve heartily. You can see the flag flying from far down the road. I enjoy waving it vigorously, but it also burns my biscuits when some fascist-loving bootlicker claims that we are not patriots. I can tell you where my dad, uncles, grandfathers, and great-grandfathers served and in which divisions all the way back to the Civil War. Almost all of them were Union, fortunately, and I am proud of all of them. I love this nation for what it once was and what it should be. The American Nazi Party can go suck it. Story 80. I went to a local one in a Washington town, not the big one in Seattle. I mainly wanted to show that this is more widespread than just in big cities. Even if this all fails and the United States becomes a Fourth Reich, I want to be able to say I tried. Story 81. I did not. I was working and I am very pregnant, so I do not feel that events like that are a safe environment for me. I know they were peaceful, but if by chance they were not because of disruptors, it is a risk I cannot take at this time. Story 82. If you want results, you need to disrupt real economic activity. A group of people getting together on a weekend does absolutely nothing to change the following Monday. Story 83. My kids were my reason. I am not going to be here forever, and if things do not change, they will not be starting their lives in the United States of America. Story 84. I didn't go because I was canvassing for my local and state candidates instead. The New Jersey gubernatorial election is about 2 weeks away. I was confident that yesterday's turnout would be good, so I figured my time was better spent here. Story 85. Yes, I went to be part of history and to unite with Americans who care about this country. Story 86. I don't trust myself to keep my cool around a counterprotester and don't want to end up on video looking like an idiot. Story 87. I wanted to meet the left-wing lunatic anti-fascist fascists and see what they were like. They seemed nice. Story 88. I attended an event in Amsterdam. If we do not show up and speak up, we are complicit. We have fallen into the trap of tolerance becoming complacency. Those of us who want equality and equity must be louder than the extremely vocal minority until we achieve change. Look at the 1960s and 1970s and note that we will not achieve change and freedom from oppressive rhetoric unless we fight back. Story 89. Nope. I would rather stay home than mingle with any hyperpartisan crowd. I am sure Redditors will compare me to people who sat by as Germany fell to Nazism, but that is the exact idiocy I have come to expect from people in echo chambers and those who are ignorant of history. Story 90. I did and intend to continue. By itself, this does not change our situation, but it is important to show how many of us strongly oppose the actions of this administration. Fascism fosters isolation and hopelessness, making us feel alone and powerless. We must not let that mindset take hold. Story 91. My plan was to go, but my dad passed away suddenly, so I joined in spirit today. I checked to see how it was going throughout the day. Story 92. I went out with my family today. My husband and our 3 boys. The crowd included older adults, young people, and families. It was wonderful to see and refilled my hope meter, since things have felt so terrible lately. I really enjoyed making our signs. The response from others was overwhelmingly positive, with most people giving fist pumps, honking in solidarity, and giving thumbs-up gestures. We did receive a couple of obscene gestures and one shouted, "Fuck you," which was surprising since there were children present and we were waving American and California flags. My oldest asked, "Why don't we flip them off in return?" My husband and I responded that is what they want, to rile us up and get us upset. We turn the other cheek and tell them we are out here fighting for their rights as well. As Martin Luther King Jr. so eloquently said, "Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." Story 93. A protest without any demands is just pageantry. It is a safe place for people to direct their anger. It does not actually challenge those who are undermining our society. This is by design. Story 94. No, because I honestly did not see the point. Aside from taking Instagram pictures in a frog costume or waving a sarcastic sign, I did not see what this was supposed to accomplish. In another thread, someone from Europe said that Americans need to learn to protest more effectively. He said that their protest is a precursor or a warning that something worse will happen if two opposing sides do not come to the table to negotiate. If all those people showed up on the street outside a member of Congress's office, demanded an end to the shutdown, and threatened to return every day until some progress was made, I would see the point. Today, however, just seemed like nothing more than a photo opportunity. Story 95. I went to the one in Port Huron, Michigan because I did not know what to do personally to make all this end. I voted, posted, spoke out, warned my friends, and cried before the election. Nothing worked. Now here we are. I will continue to do what I can because I love my country. No kings. Story 96. I went, and I'm glad I did. It was only the second protest I have attended and my first alone. I wanted to add my voice to the number of people publicly opposing this regime. It was also a way to show my mom how serious I am about opposing the person she voted for. Story 97. We went. I do not know whether protests have any real impact, but if there is even a small chance that adding to the numbers will influence lawmakers to take action against Donald Trump's breathtaking corruption, I am on board. I have no other way to make my voice heard between elections. Story 98. I went because of a variety of other things I particularly don't support. Putting immigrants in concentration camps, bombing small boats in international waters, National Guard troops deployed to fake emergencies in American cities, masked, unmarked immigration and customs enforcement, agents kidnapping people off the street, convicted felons in top government posts, removal of reproductive, constitutional, educational, and other rights, treating corporations as people, and ignoring lying politicians. No politician should be considerably wealthier at the end of their term. As a young person, I always assumed the world would become a more progressive place, maybe not in a linear way, but overall. As an older person, I am appalled at how wrong I was. Story 99. I went to a peaceful No Kings protest in racist, red Florida. The turnout was fabulous, and there is nothing like being around so many Americans who feel like I do. All age groups were represented, and the creativity and joy were overwhelming. It gives me hope. Story 100. I was waiting for a bus to the protest when two women saw my sign and started talking with me. They had no sign because they joined on the spur of the moment. One of them said, "Something snapped. It's too much. We have to do something." I think that's why most people go. Story 101. I have not attended any because my husband is a general schedule grade 15 employee, and I feel he might already have a target on his back for being married to a civil rights attorney. This morning he told me he no longer cares. He is too miserable in his job to worry about losing it. Story 102. I went because it is my civic duty to stand up against fascism. Story 103. This was the first protest for my husband and me. We went because we wanted to stand up for what is right. Story 104. Yes, I am a goddamn patriot, and I refuse to let fascism take root any further in this nation. Story 105. I did not attend because I have a 1-month-old daughter, and the logistics of taking her were not feasible. I am glad to see so many people showed up. Story 106. No, I have a family, and weekends are the only time I can spend quality time with my child. I am trying to make the most of them before it starts to get cold. I find it funny that I was downvoted. Story 107. I stayed home and laughed at the irony of a king allowing such dissent. Story 108. Virtue signaling is like passing gas. You may feel better, but nothing is accomplished for anyone. Story 109. Among other reasons, my brother-in-law is an immigrant, and I fight to make this country a safe place for him to live. Going to the big protests is the least I can do. Story 110. Yes, downtown St. Louis. I showed up because Trump and company are criminals who are dismantling our democracy and looting our government. Story 111. I had a large previously scheduled family event, so I could not participate the way we wanted. I joined some people on a street corner while we waited for food. It is not perfect, but it is something. Story 112. Yes, we went as part of a weekend getaway. Trump and his crew are trying to enrich themselves by running the country into the ground. Why would anyone support this? Yes, there are people with opposing views, but surely they have some level of intelligence and common sense to see Trump is up to no good. Trump does not stand for the American values I grew up with. I consider myself old school. Name one thing he is doing that is honorable, empathetic, graceful, classy, admirable, unselfish, or decent. For every one item, if that, there are 5 or more negatives. Maybe I do not want to believe that so many Americans lack these qualities and that our country is doomed. Story 113. I wish I could, but I need to bottle feed a kitten that was abandoned on our porch. If I walked there, I would have to turn right around and walk back to feed her. Story 114. Honestly, while I consider myself fairly left on the political spectrum and attended the Women's March, it feels like there is so much to protest that it is overwhelming. I am empathetic toward those who do not understand the movement. I went because of the blatant lies the political right is spreading. The Epstein files and the billions being sent to Argentina when Americans could use that money for social services, roads, and paying our public workers, such as teachers, a living wage. Story 115. I went the second time. I feel this is important. Silence and not voting are forms of complicity. I am only one person. Please join us. Story 116. My governor activated the National Guard. I went out to remind them of their oath. They were not deployed to my city, but it was still a positive experience and allowed me to get information about a few organizations I could join. Story 117. I went to 2 events. One was in the county north of me from 11 to 12. The other was in the county south of me from 1 to 3. I will be back at my local Saturday weekly protest next weekend. Story 118. Bullshit. Where are those pro-Hamas protesters? Is Kamala Harris Indian now? Story 119. This is Kansas City, Missouri. We went to the last event and were a bit nervous until we arrived. Walking to the plaza, we saw a few people, then more, with goofy costumes and lots of signs. Then thousands of people appeared. At that moment, a wave of relief and love hit us. It was wonderful. Nothing would keep us from this No Kings event. Never be afraid. Story 120. This was my first time attending a protest. As a federal worker, I had always been afraid to protest. Now I am afraid not to. I went from feeling hopeless, confused, and alone in my fear for the country to feeling supported, united, and hopeful. There were so many protesters and everyone was so kind. People of all ages were present, not just 1 or 2 demographics. Most drivers shouted support and honked. I saw people who seemed to laugh and cry at the same time, relieved that we were out there saying enough is enough. Story 121. I went because I will not sit by and let an insurrectionist and convicted felon strip me of my rights, call me a terrorist because I did not vote for him, and take away what I fought so hard to obtain. We are more powerful together than he is alone. Story 122. My fiancé and I attended and were overjoyed by the huge turnout and the sheer diversity of attendees. People from all walks of life were there. It was very special and impactful. Story 123. I marched in Queens, New York. It was well attended, and local leaders spoke at the end. Our congresswoman and city councilmen were there. It felt good to attend and know I am not alone in thinking this is all crazy. This was my 3rd march this year. Story 124. I went and I'm glad I did. I decided to go because if my 80-year-old mother can, I can too. I also had some fear of missing out. The changes that this administration is making and the things they are doing are numerous yet incremental. We hear about some wild thing they have done, a crazy executive order or a new law passed in some state, and it is terrible. Then the next day there is something else and we have already forgotten. Yesterday's news. It has happened over and over again since January. These protests are a way to prevent it from being normalized, a way to say, We know what you are doing, and we will not let our rights be chipped away. Otherwise, by sitting silently until it affects us, we are like frogs in a pot. I cannot leave the country. I do not make enough money to have influence in government. I cannot even bow out of consumerism entirely. But using my voice is still free. It was so fun. People were sharing signs, seeing acquaintances, and dancing. Some people came out to see what it was all about, even though they do not closely follow politics. With local elections coming up, this was a fantastic time to show up. It also made people feel less alone. We are not just individuals watching the world burn. That is a powerful feeling many people need right now. Story 125. I went, and it was astonishing how normal everyone was. People of all ages, many wearing blue-collar work clothes. There were a few Palestine protesters who are like the Free Mumia movement of today, but honestly most people are just sick of this. The Make America Great Again types yelling about blue hair are frankly delusional and obviously reactionary. Story 126. Silence is consent to the administration and its agenda to destroy our country. I do not want to tell my grandchildren that I did nothing. Story 127. I did not go. It would have been incredibly poor form to be the one American holding a protest against kings in the United Kingdom. Going back to the United States for it was not a reasonable option. Story 128. I did. I was thrilled that several hundred of my neighbors showed up in a traditionally red voting retirement community. The Republican counter-protest had at most 20 people. No kings. Story 129. I stand in solidarity with others in my community, especially those who are severely affected by the illegal actions of the current regime. I publicly reject fascism. I exercise my rights to public assembly and free speech. Story 130. I went to the one in my neighborhood, and it was awesome. Great turnout with a lot of positive energy. It was peaceful. I went to have my voice heard, to make my presence known, and to reaffirm my opposition to the kakistocracy currently in power. Story 131. Remember in the last presidential election when one political party did not hold a primary and appointed its nominee, then claimed fraud when its candidate lost and demanded the forcible removal of the winning candidate by any means and replacement with its appointed nominee? The people protesting should be protesting against their own party. A king is not elected. He holds power by inheritance. This president was elected. Story 132. I wanted to, but I work in healthcare and cannot get weekends off if I am already scheduled to work. There is nobody to replace me. Story 133. I did not attend. I believe in the premise, but I do not think the method used will accomplish anything. I also had prior plans made several months ago that I could not reschedule. Story 134. My dad is in local government in a red state and is up for re-election. I am holding off for now but plan to get involved once things are settled. It is sad that we have to take this kind of thing into consideration. Story 135. No, but I support other people's choice to exercise their First Amendment right to peaceably protest. Story 136. No, I didn't go. I just watched the clips online. I understand why people showed up. Everyone is tired of feeling like they don't have a say anymore. Story 137. I went because Donald Trump is a union-busting scab, and the working class needs better representation. His tariffs also affect working-class people the most, pushing us back into poverty and eliminating the middle class. Story 138. From a global citizen in Europe, thank you to everyone standing up for democracy. I still cannot fathom why we are not seeing large numbers of conservatives or Republicans demonstrating for democracy as well. This should not be a political issue. Story 139. We went to a local gathering with 40,000 other people because we would all gladly give up our Saturday to protest the rise of neo-fascism in the United States. Story 140. Nah, wasn't really my thing. I admire the effort and dedication, though. Story 141. No, I did not go. Why? Because you all were silent when Biden was messing up the border. Now I will be silent while Trump abuses the undo button on that. Story 142. No, because I have adult responsibilities. It's called a job to maintain my house and car, pay bills, and put food on the table. Story 143. Show support for farmers facing tariff policies that are driving them into bankruptcy. Story 144. I went to Phoenix. It was very crowded, and there were many speakers, including the state's attorney general. I feel it is my civic responsibility. Story 145. An estimate of 7 million attendees equates to 3.8% of the voting age population in the United States. That means 96.2% of adults, regardless of party, view this as nothing more than a temper tantrum by people who need to start thinking for themselves instead of living in an echo chamber. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.